Mark emailed and asked me, are there any bands out there or artists that I feel get too much hate? Absolutely. To save a lot of time, there's just no arguing the fact that all across the decades, pop stars and pop singers get far more hate than they probably deserve. I've said it before, Justin Bieber, Lady Gaga, Britney Spears, Debbie Gibson, NSYNC, whoever, they're not going into a song assuming it's going to change your life. They're not supposed to. It's bubblegum music. It's fluff. People really need to stop wasting their hate on that stuff. Now, when it comes to current bands, there's no question that there's one group that gets far more hate than anybody else on the planet: Nickelback. Whether it's the music media, magazines, fanboys, people love to hate Nickelback. But here's the funny thing, while their music has absolutely no appeal to me whatsoever, you can't fault them for being bad musicians. They play their instruments well, they write songs, they show up for sold-out gigs all across the planet. People need to learn the difference between a band they don't like and a band that has no talent. It comes down to that whole learning to hate correctly thing that I spoke about a few months ago. I'm not saying that these artists are good by any stretch of the imagination, but come on, folks, why waste your musical energy on bands you don't even like? Andrew on Tumblr asked me if there's any songs I enjoy that are musically lazy. I'm gonna assume that he means songs that really don't have much behind them or aren't very creative musically, and when it comes to that answer, it's an absolute yes. Nah, I don't call these songs guilty pleasures because I don't feel a shred of guilt when I'm singing along to Roxette or Criss Cross or EMF. It's simply other music that I enjoy, plain and simple. I mean, when it comes down to it, you can actually argue that the punk music coming out of the late 1970s was some of the laziest ever, as while it was overflowing with energy and attitude, the actual musical arrangements were as simple as you can think of. But at the same time, I live my life by a number of those same albums. So yes, I like a lot of music that could be considered creatively lazy, but there's a value to it. It's called musical enjoyment. My last question comes from Jeremy over on Facebook, and he asked me, what do I think is the greatest moment in music history? Congratulations, my friend. You've come up with the most impossible question I've gotten so far. So I'm just gonna cover 3 singular music moments. And these are gonna be moments in an actual song, not live performances or an invention in technology like an amp or recording techniques, just actual music. While the easy ones would be the first recordings of Elvis Presley or that first chord on the Beatles song Help, let's look at a few more recent moments that get overlooked. I think one of the most important in recent history happened on February 10th, 1978, as that was the day that a debut album from a little band called Van Halen hit shelves. Why that album, you might ask? Good question. One word: eruption. Eddie Van Halen's now legendary instrumental turned the world of rock guitar completely on its head, and it honestly took the universe a number of years to catch up with him. This, in my opinion, also is the nail in the coffin for disco, and you can see it as the formal beginning of what would become the 80s hair band movement. Next up, November 30th, 1982. The arrival of Thriller. Yes, the entire album. 7 of those 9 songs became top 10 hits. And you can really see this as the point where Michael Jackson completely stepped out of the shadows of his years with the Jackson 5 and became the solo artist that would become a legend. And honestly, you just can't argue with the numbers it continues to put up after 30 years. Finally, jumping ahead a decade, December 15th, 1992 was huge, as that was the day that Dr. Dre's The Chronic formally dropped, as well as a little song called Nothing But a G Thing. I've always marked this song as the one that broke gangster rap to white kids in the suburbs, or as some might call it, turned gangster rap into an industry. Furthermore, to this day, you can see ripples of the impact of The Chronic in almost every song anywhere in the top charts. While there are scores of legendary moments all across the decades and genres, those are a few of the more recent that I feel absolutely changed music history forever. Are they the greatest? I'm not really sure, but you can't argue the musical significance of any of them. So those are my questions for this time. If you've got a question for me, go ahead and email me at thedailyguru@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Tumblr right here, and I'll see you guys again tomorrow.